This is the SMART FY 2022 Support for the Adam Walsh Act Implementation Grant Program Application Guidance Webinar. Hello, everyone. I'm Dawn Duran, Acting Director of the Office of Sex Offender Sentencing, Monitoring, Apprehending, Registering, and Tracking, in short, the SMART Office. Welcome to this webinar, which will provide guidance for applicants to the fiscal year 2022 Adam Walsh Act Implementation Grant Program solicitation. As you may know, the Adam Walsh Act was enacted in 2006. Title I of the Act laid out the requirements of the Sex Offender Registration and Notification Act, or SORNA. We now have 18 implemented states, 4 territories, and 136 tribes, with many of the remaining jurisdictions actively working towards implementation. As we continue to implement SORNA, we are also moving toward maintaining SORNA requirements and best practices, as well as incorporating newer requirements, such as the 21-day international travel notification requirement codified by International Megan's Law. We hope your jurisdiction will use these AWA funds to increase and improve the maintenance and sustainability of your program, as well as to enhance training and support of local, regional, and tribal efforts within your jurisdiction. The AWA solicitation is open to all SORNA jurisdictions, the states, principal territories, the District of Columbia, and federally recognized tribes that have elected to implement SORNA. At this time, I will turn the webinar over to Samantha Opon, Supervisory Program Manager for Grants, Kashawn Arnold, Grants Management Specialist, and Stephanie Carrick, Senior Policy Advisor, for specific guidance on applying to the fiscal year 22 Adam Walsh Act Implementation Grant Program.
This is Stephanie Carrick. In this webinar, we will address the requirements of the Adam Walsh Act, or AWA, particularly Title I of the Adam Walsh Act, which is the Sex Offender Registration and Notification Act, or SORNA. We will discuss eligibility to apply for the AWA Implementation Grant, information about the award and its timeline, and the goals, objectives, and deliverables of the Adam Walsh Act Implementation Grant Program. We will also discuss the process of preparing an application for the grant. The SMART Office, through the AWA Implementation Grant and other activities, assists jurisdictions with developing and enhancing programs designed to implement the requirements of SORNA. SORNA sets forth a comprehensive set of standards for the registration and notification of convicted sex offenders. It revised prior federal laws on sex offender registration and notification and, in so doing, closed gaps and loopholes that existed under those laws. Under SORNA, jurisdictions are required to maintain a sex offender registration and notification system that adheres to SORNA's requirements and captures each registrable offender who resides, works, or goes to school in the jurisdiction. SORNA went beyond prior federal laws by expanding the number of sex offenses that must be captured by registration jurisdictions. And perhaps most importantly, SORNA expanded the definition of jurisdiction to include federally recognized Indian tribes, of whom many have elected to stand up their own registration and notification systems. The goals, objectives, and deliverables of the AWA Implementation Grant center around achieving substantial implementation of SORNA, maintaining and enhancing SORNA implementation, and sustaining a SORNA-compliant registration and notification system.
Hello, my name is Samantha Opon, and I'm Acting Supervisory Program Manager for Grants in the SMART Office. I will be discussing the more technical aspects of the solicitation. In fiscal year 2022, the SMART Office is seeking applications for funding under the Support for Adam Walsh Act Implementation Grant Program, up to $400,000 for a period of up to 36 months. The awardees will be notified no later than September 30th, 2022, and the award period of performance will begin on October 1st, 2022. Please see page 1 of the solicitation for application deadline. In 2022, applications will be submitted to the Office of Justice Programs in a two-step process. Applicants must first register by submitting an SF-424 and an SFLLL in grants.gov by the deadline referenced on page 1 of the solicitation. Applicants will then submit the full application, including required attachments in JustGrants. To be considered timely, the full application must be submitted in JustGrants by the application deadline. As always, we recommend that applicants submit their application prior to the deadlines to allow time for applicants to receive validation messages indicating a successful and timely submission or rejection notification to promptly correct any problem that may have occurred. Eligible applicants under the Support for Adam Walsh Act Implementation Grant Program are limited to jurisdictions that are defined by SORNA as states, the District of Columbia, the principal U.S. territories, and federally recognized Indian tribes.
The SORNA activities and strategies that the AWA grant could be used to develop or enhance are the items listed here. If you have any questions about possible strategies and activities during the application process, please contact our office. States may apply to support efforts of local or state units of government or expand or develop programs to include registration for tribes who are located in states that fall under Public Law 83-280, or for tribal nations that have had their SORNA functions delegated to the state. To the extent that the state is carrying out the registration and notification functions for a tribe, the state may apply for funding to support those activities. For states that have SORNA tribal jurisdictions, the state may apply for funding to enhance their collaboration with those jurisdictions. State jurisdictions are encouraged to specifically address the unique needs of the tribes located in their state in any project designed for statewide SORNA implementation. If a jurisdiction wishes to collaborate with another jurisdiction in an approach or on a project, the applicants must include supporting documentation, such as a letter of cooperation, a memorandum of agreement or understanding, or an interagency agreement that demonstrates the collaborative endeavor from each SORNA jurisdiction involved in the collaboration. Likewise, to the extent that the state is carrying out the registration and notification functions for a tribe, the state should include a letter of support or cooperation and/or an MOU that indicates that the local jurisdiction or tribe is in agreement with and supportive of the proposed activities.
Next, we will discuss preparing an application. In the next several slides, you will be provided step-by-step guidance in the preparation of an application for this program. There are several elements that make up the application, and each of these elements must be fully completed for funding consideration. We will explain how each application needs to meet basic minimum requirements that will be evaluated or weighted by peer reviewers. Please keep in mind that proposed AWA or SORNA programs and how likely they are to succeed are based on the information that you clearly and thoughtfully outlined in your application. Application elements. Here are the application elements for the solicitation. Proposal abstract, proposal narrative. Please be mindful that the proposal narrative must be submitted in a web-based form, and it is a required document in order to meet basic minimum requirements. Goals, objectives, and deliverables should be submitted in a web-based form, as well as the budget narrative and budget worksheet. All should be submitted web-based form. in order to meet basic minimum requirements and advance to peer review. The first section of the application is the proposal narrative, which begins with a description of the issue. This is worth 20% of the overall score. Applicants should clearly state how the proposed activities are responsive to any unmet implementation requirements identified in the jurisdiction's most recent SORNA substantial implementation review. In plain language, be sure to discuss the jurisdiction's status related to substantial implementation of SORNA, including needs identified in order to substantially implement or maintain implementation of SORNA. Project design and implementation. This section is also in the proposal narrative, and this portion of the application is worth 30% of the overall score. This section is very important. Applicants should describe the goals of the proposed project and identify its objectives and outcomes. For goals, applicants should outline how the proposed project will move the jurisdiction closer to substantial implementation of SORNA or enhance ongoing SORNA compliance, and to help sustain the efficacy and the viability of the jurisdiction's SORNA program. Specifically, identify each SORNA requirement that will be implemented or enhanced as a result of this project. Applicants must clearly describe its goals, objectives, and deliverables. These must be specific, measurable, realistic, and time-limited. For objectives, applicants should explain how the program will accomplish its goals. The objectives should be quantifiable and describe the steps necessary to accomplish project goals. When formulating the project goals and objectives, applicants should be cognizant of performance measures that will be required of successful applicants. The project narrative will also include a statement about capabilities and competencies. This is worth 25% of the overall score. In this section, you must describe the management structure and staffing of the project, which includes defining roles and responsibilities of the organizational and functional components and personnel. This section should also describe the experience and capabilities of the applicant and any contractors that will be used to implement the project, and highlight any previous experience implementing projects of similar design or magnitude. In addition, position descriptions and/or resumes for key personnel and positions must be attached to your application. Applicants should describe how performance will be documented, monitored, and evaluated, including how the impact of the strategy implemented or enhancement will be determined. This portion is worth 5% of the overall score. Additional performance metrics that will be used to assess program effectiveness should be listed, as well as the process by which the data was collected. OJP will require each successful applicant to submit regular performance data that demonstrates the results of the work carried out under the award. The performance data should directly relate to the goals, objectives, and deliverables identified. The next section is the budget detail worksheet and narrative. Items included in the budget should correspond with the proposed goals, objectives, and deliverables identified in your application packet. This is worth 10% of the overall score. Please note that there is no match required for the AWA grant program. Applicants must use the web-based budget narrative and worksheet forms in Just Grants. This will ensure that the budget aligns with OJP's budget categories and that the budget costs are broken out by year. The budget narrative should thoroughly and clearly describe each category expenses listed in the budget worksheet. OJP expects proposed budgets to be complete, mathematically sound, and cost-effective. An applicant should demonstrate in the budget narrative how it will maximize cost-effectiveness of award funding. An indirect cost rate negotiation agreement must be included in your packet as necessary. And the indirect cost rate should be current. However, in the event that an expired direct cost agreement is attached, funding that supports indirect costs will be withheld until a new signed agreement is in place. The plan for SORNA sustainability is worth 5% of the overall score. In this section, you should discuss how the proposed project will reduce the jurisdiction's long-term costs in registry operation and maintenance, how the program will continue to operate beyond the grant award period, and if personnel costs are supported by grant funds. Include how these positions will be maintained beyond the grant award period. Other required items under the grant application will be scored with the value of up to 5%. These include items like project abstract, the project timeline, position descriptions and resumes, organizational chart, as well as any memorandum of understanding and indirect cost rate agreement. Examples of generally allowable activities and costs under AWA include personnel, fringe benefits, and equipment. DOJ defines equipment as items with a per unit value over $5,000. Examples of equipment include, but are not limited to, digital fingerprint and palm print technology, DNA collection, storage and security, fingerprint identification readers, and vehicle purchases. Please note that vehicle purchases are reviewed and approved on a case-by-case basis. A robust justification and a cost-benefit analysis is required and should be attached with your application. Supplies are also allowable. Some of the items under supplies include computers, scanners, printers, copiers, which also require a justification. Other items that are allowable are all registration-related equipment, such as cameras, kiosks, radios, tablets, as well as general office supplies, printing, and educational materials. SMART allows applicants to allocate travel and lodging expenses for up to 3 participants into a SMART-sponsored training event, conference, or working group. Locations to be announced or determined. Training, seminars, or conferences, and any other SORNA-related activity to include officer safety topics is another allowable cost. Technical assistant meetings fall under this category as well. For implemented jurisdictions, jurisdiction-wide trainings and conferences are an allowable cost. Some of the other allowable costs under travel is mileage, local travel to attend meetings, perform verification checks, using personal or jurisdiction vehicles, mileage log required. Not allowable is gas, fuel costs, maintenance of vehicles. Car rentals must be approved. And please remember, all proposed travel costs must align with GSA travel guidelines. Rental cars must have prior approval from SMART, grant manager, for any circumstances. Additional costs and activities that may be allowable include subawards for other entities that are responsible for jurisdiction's SORNA-related activities, contracts for materials, or professional services with justification. Any contract or subaward must use established agency guidelines for competitive procurement process. And you must follow the guidelines in the DOJ financial guide for limits on sole source vendors in daily rates for consultants. General allowable activities and costs include rental space, office space, meeting space, event space, software, including upgrades, licenses, subscriptions, utilities, internet access, and telephone service, officer identification and visibility materials, conference registration fees, unallowable activity costs, construction, food and beverage, gift cards, prepaid phone cards, stipends, gasoline, fuel and maintenance, vehicle maintenance, repairs, and vehicle insurance.
My name is Kashawn Arnold, and I'm a grants manager in the SMART office. I would like to walk you through some additional application components and some resources for your reference to ensure a successful application process. Additional application components. For any attachments, please ensure that the file names are clear and descriptive so they can easily be identified by those individuals reviewing your application. For example, if you are attaching a program abstract, you can simply name it Program Abstract to minimize any confusion. Other application components that are required to be attached to your application at the time of submission include a project timeline outlining your projected activities and milestones over the life of the grant, resumes of key personnel that will be working on the grant, and an organizational chart. Other attachments include, as applicable, a tribal authorizing resolution for tribal applicants, which documents the tribal election to carry out the requirements of SORNA, and a memorandum of understanding. Again, please be sure the naming conventions of the file names are clear. If your application, including your budget, identifies any proposed non-competitive agreements that are or may be considered procurement contracts rather than subawards for purposes of federal grant administrative requirements, the applicant must also list the entities with which the applicant proposes to contract. OJP offers a number of resources regarding subawards and procurement contracts under OJP awards, including a toolkit for OJP recipients, a checklist to determine subrecipient or contractor classification, sole source justification, fact sheet, and sole source review checklist. The legal instrument used does not determine whether it is a procurement contract or a subaward. Rather, it is the substance of the work being completed. If the subrecipient is completing or reporting on data or progress toward goals and objectives defined in the grant application, it is likely a subaward. Please note that any proposed subawards must be approved by the SMART office. We may consider administrative priorities among other factors and determine whether to approve any such subaward. Please refer to the OJP toolkit for detailed information regarding subawards. Please be sure to refer to the Disclosure and Assurances section contained in the application checklist at the end of the solicitation. The following disclosures must be uploaded to Just Grants at the time of the application submission. Disclosure of lobbying activities. An applicant that expends any funds for lobbying activities to influence or attempt to influence a covered federal action, such as the making of a grant, is to provide all of the information requested on the Disclosure of Lobbying Activity form, or the SFLLL, which is completed in grants.gov as part of initiating your application submission. The disclosure of duplication in cost items. The applicant must disclose whether it has any pending applications for federally funded grants or cooperative agreements that include requests for funding to support the same project being proposed in the application under the solicitation, and would cover any identical cost items outlined in the budget submitted to OJP as part of the application under the solicitation. It must also include the DOJ Certified Standard Assurances Agreement between the department and the grantee, outlining the legal and fiduciary responsibilities of the grantee related to the administration of the award. An applicant that is designated as a high-risk grantee by DOJ is to submit a separate attachment to its application, information that OJP will use, among other pertinent information, to determine whether it will consider or select the application for an award under the solicitation. Please note that failure to include these items in the application package will delay processing if awarded, as well as potentially delay grantee access to funding post-award. Please note that the programmatic and financial points of contact for the award must complete the DOJ Grants Financial Management training course within 120 days of award acceptance. Failure to complete this requirement will result in award funds being withheld or frozen until it is satisfied. There is some allowance if you have completed this training within a 3-year time period. If that is the case, you would need to provide the official certificate of completion as proof that you have satisfied this requirement. Now we're going to talk about how to apply. The pre-application process involves first locating the funding opportunity on grants.gov. You can conduct a search using the opportunity number, which is contained in the solicitation, or through a search of the Catalog of Federal Domestic Assistance, better known as CFDA number 16.750, entitled Support for Adam Walsh Act Implementation Grant Program. For more information on this process, you can refer to the OJP Grant Application Resource Guide. Applying for this funding opportunity is a 2-step process. Step 1, applicants must register in grants.gov. Applicants will submit an SF-424 and SFLLL in grants.gov. The SF-424 must include the legal agency name and address as registered with SAM.gov, as well as the name and contact information of the agency's authorized representative. For example, your executive director or tribal leader can be identified as the authorized representative. The SFLLL, which is a disclosure of any lobbying activities, must also be submitted in grants.gov along with the SF-424 to successfully complete step 1 of the application process. Please note that lobbying activities are not supported by AWA grant funds. Failure to register in grants.gov by the deadline will prevent you from advancing to step 2, hence prohibiting you from applying for AWA funding in 2022. Step 2 of the application process is the submission of the full application, including all application components and attachments in Just Grants. To aid in this process, please use the application checklist located at the end of the solicitation to ensure you have included all the required application documents. OJP urges all applicants to submit applications at least 72 hours prior to the due date to address any issues with the application submission process that may arise. When the application has been submitted successfully in Just Grants, the applicant will see a green banner across the top of the screen containing a confirmation message. The applicant will then receive a confirmation email from Just Grants. Please see the technical support information listed here for grants.gov. For assistance with the submission of the SF424 and SFLLL, you can contact grants.gov through their toll-free number 1-800-518-4726 or email address at support@grants.gov. The customer support line for grants.gov operates 24 hours a day, 7 days a week, except for federal holidays. Grants.gov also has resources for applicants on its website that may be of interest to you, including checking your eligibility, applying for grants, frequently asked questions, and even tracking your application. Technical support for Just Grants. The Just Grant system also provides technical support to assist applicants with the application process. Just Grant's toll-free number is 833-872-5175. The Just Grant Support Desk operates Monday through Friday from 5 a.m. to 9 p.m. Eastern Time, and Saturday, Sunday, and federal holidays from 9 a.m. to 5 p.m. Eastern Time.
Here is a list of resources and tools that are available to all registration jurisdictions. SMART.gov is the SMART Office's official website and includes several tools to assist jurisdictions in their efforts to implement SORNA, including a checklist and the other items that are listed here. The Drew Shadeen National Sex Offender Public Website, or nsopw.gov, is a public website that enables the public to simultaneously search all registration jurisdictions' public registry websites. The SORNA Exchange Portal is a web-based tool that the SMART Office created. The portal facilitates various communications between registration jurisdictions, most notably notifications between jurisdictions regarding sex offender relocation. The Sex Offender Registry Tool, or SORT, provides local registration agencies with their own specialized public sex offender registry websites and can function as the state-level administrative registry system. The Sex Offender Management Assessment and Planning Initiative, or SOMAPI, is a large-scale project designed to assess the state of research and practice in sex offender management. There are also many resources and tools that our office has designed specifically for tribal jurisdictions. The Tribal and Territory Sex Offender Registry System, or TSORS, is the tribal counterpart to SORT and functions as the jurisdiction-level registry system. It also includes a customizable public website. The Tribal Access Program is a Department of Justice program that supports tribes in analyzing their needs for national crime information, and it helps to provide appropriate solutions, including a biometric and biographic computer workstation with capabilities to process finger and palm prints, taking mugshots, and submitting records to national databases, as well as accessing CJIS systems such as NSOR for criminal and civil purposes. The Native American Sex Offender Management Project, or NASOM, seeks to identify and develop existing resources for the treatment, management, and reentry of American Indian and Alaska Native adult and juvenile sex offenders who are returning to tribal lands. The SORNA Model Tribal Code assists tribes in developing or updating existing sex offender registration legislation to meet SORNA's requirements. The Guide to SORNA Implementation in Indian Country provides registry personnel with information needed to assist in efforts towards implementing SORNA. SORNA tribal training and technical assistance is also available to assist tribes in these efforts. If you have any questions regarding the solicitation, please reference the contact information in the solicitation. For general questions, please contact the SMART office at the information listed here. Thank you.